Next up, we have quite a different situation. Next up is the head of a family of 10, all of whom just barely escaped a watery grave. Now let's meet a man who was responsible for saving 10 lives, including his own.
Number 1, what is your name, please?
My name is Gerald Surfus.
Number 2.
My name is Gerald Surfus.
Number 3.
My name is Gerald Surfus.
And here's the story of Gerald Surfus, and if you're a boating enthusiast, I advise you to listen closely. You might learn something. It says, I, Gerald Surfus, used to be a boating enthusiast, but no more. Gentlemen, don't leave yet. We need you back here for pictures. Just come right back on your marks, and don't be over anxious. We'll get you all in. Start the affidavit again. It says, I, Gerald Surfus, used to be a boating enthusiast, but no more. You see, on our summer vacation, my wife, our 5 daughters, my parents, my sister, and I took a trip in our brand new 26-foot fishing boat. After a pleasant day's outing, we were heading home when suddenly the bow broke off and the boat fell apart. You heard right, it simply fell apart. All 10 of us hung onto a piece of the hull with only 2 life jackets and 1 flotation cushion. Survival became the name of the game, especially in the dark and terrifying night that followed. By mid-afternoon of the next day, I knew that I had to go for help. We had salvaged a large styrofoam cooler, so 4 of us held onto it and kicked off towards shore. Hours later, we were rescued by a fishing boat. I am proud of the spirit and unselfishness of all of my family, especially my wife. She was bruised and scraped and stung by a Portuguese man-of-war. Nonetheless, for more than 24 hours, she held tight to our 4-year-old, despite the fact that waves knocked them into the water dozens of times. And here's the capper. My wife can barely swim. Signed, Gerald Surfus. And Peggy Cass, what's on your mind, my
Well,
dear?
number 3, was it a structural defect in the boat?
Yes,
Well, number 3, do you mind if I ask you how much that boat cost?
between $10,000 and $20,000.
Well, number 3, did you get your money back?
It's a lawsuit right now.
I should think that you've got a very good chance. Number 1, what was your wife clinging to outside of the baby? I mean, if you only had just the two life jackets and the flotation cushion.
She was clinging to the hull. All of us were.
Oh, I see. And she got, if she couldn't swim, how did she manage to get back to the hull when she got knocked off into the waves?
Well, it was the boat capsized, and we gathered around the boat and was holding on to it, and she was holding on to the baby that had a life preserver.
Oh, gee willikers. Now, oh.
All right, that takes us, please, to Gene Rayburn.
Yes, sir. Number 2, is there anything you would do differently now that you've had this experience if you started out on another trip?
I think, no, I don't think so, but I think my wife could suggest some things that she'd like to do different.
What, like learn to swim?
No, like have me bring the radio along.
What do you mean?
I didn't have a radio on board, and we were kind of 10 miles or 20 miles out.
Number 3, how long, when this thing fell apart, how long did it take for it to capsize or sink? Just
Instantly.
instantly. And number 1, how much of the hull, and why didn't that part of the hull sink, too, that you were clinging to, and how big a hunk was that?
I imagine it was probably a quarter of the boat, and air probably kept it up, with the styrofoam in between the moldings of the fiberglass might have kept it up.
Yeah.
And on to Kitty Carlisle.
Thank you. Number 2, what good would a radio have done if it sank immediately? Would you have been able to have salvaged it and used it, or wouldn't it have gotten wet?
I don't know. My wife reminds me every once in a while that I didn't bring the radio, though.
Yeah. Number 3, when you went for help, is that when you were rescued?
Yes.
Number 1, why was only 1 life jacket? Did they sink, or did you not have enough?
There were sufficient life jackets, but they were thrown out of the boat, and only 2 people had them on.
I see. Number 2, this wasn't a homemade...
I'm sorry, going down to Nautical Bill Cullen.
Can I ask one question of all? Number 3, had you had any boating experience before this happened?
Yes.
How much?
Some, not much.
Number 2, any for you?
About 10 years.
10 years. Number one, any for you?
Never had owned a boat, but had been out on boats.
And number one, you went out as far as how far from shore?
I was about 30 miles from shore. We were going to the Bahamas.
Number one, without trying to blame this on you or vindicate the boat builders, don't you think that you did not exercise the kind of precaution that should have been exercised when you take your family out that far from shore?
Well, I guess many of them do not wear life jackets when they go out on a boat, and if we had all had the life jackets on, there would have been savings, I'm
number
sure.
two, you said...
All righty, there goes the bell, and when that happens, it means no more questions. Mark your ballots, if you will, friends, and you and I will try to decide whether we think it's number one, or number two, or number three. And panel, I ask you to vote fast, please. We have a small time problem. Peggy, have you,
Well, I don't care if you'd only ever been up in a glider. No boat should break underneath you just like that. Boom, and it's gone. I voted for number one, and I'm glad everybody was saved.
So we've got a one showing. Gene Rayburn.
I voted for the one with the greatest sailing experience, because anybody who would try to go to Bermuda with very little experience has got to be a dingbat in my book.
So you went to the Bahamas, but in any event, it's still 45 miles across there. We've got one and a two and Kitty.
I voted for number one because he's the palest. He still looks frightened.
A pair of ones and two. Bill Cullen, how you coming?
I hope everybody who has a boat learns a slight lesson from this. I voted for number one.
All right, there we go. The votes are in. Will the real Gerald Surfus please stand up? No, it's Gerald in the middle. Thank you, Gerald, very much. Glad to have you with us. Indeed we are. Number one, let's find out about you, sir, with your three big votes. What's your real name? What do you do?
Jim Smith, and I'm Vice President of Brand Management for a beverage company.
Ah, there. And number three, sir, how about you?
Charles Cage, and I work at the maintenance department in the Sigmund building.
Yes. Of the Seagram's building. Well, Gerald, we're glad that you all made it. I hope it doesn't happen, anything like it happens to you again. Thank you very much for being with us today. Take care. Gerald Surfus.
In addition to the cash awards, our first team of challenges will receive St. Mary's No Iron blended muslin sheets and pillowcases in florals and coordinating solid colors. St. Mary's instant high fashion for your bed and bath. Our second team will receive Sarah Coventry's Twilight with warm lilac tones, a pendant with golden tone necklace sprinkled with rhinestones with matching earrings by Sarah Coventry.
Of course, David Lewis of the Hasty Pudding Club was the star of our first spot. We don't usually like to take the spotlight off the star, except I do want to give a special vote of thanks to Soupy Sales for taking time. Soupy, come out here, you little guy.
I'd like to plug, I open at Finocchio's in Frisco.
Simply, we have only time to say that it's time for us to knock it off. Arlie ever takes time off. He really got his.
I know
both parts.
This is a Lord and Taylor. The tailor made it. Lord knows who's going to pay for it. This kid's great.
Yeah, they're great. Take care now, friends. We'll see you soon.
This is Bill Wendell speaking for it to tell the truth. A Mark Goodson, Bill Totman production.